what was your childhood like? Because when I heard about it, I was like, wow, that's like what you read about. I just found it fascinating. Paint us a picture.
Paint us a picture. Okay, so I grew up on the Bowery in downtown Manhattan. The Bowery, when I was a kid in the 90s, was a bit desolate, as was most of Soho. There were a lot of artists who had moved to the neighborhood in the 70s and 80s and kind of taken up residence in these big lofts. My parents are artists. My father is a visual artist, and my mom's a documentary filmmaker. And they came to New York in the 80s. They were dating, and, you know, they'd always wanted to visit, and they came here. It's like, you know, quite a classic American story in some ways. They came to New York with a couple suitcases, not a lot of money.
It's also
they were
the story
young.
of New York too. Artists, like European artists coming to New York. This was the hub for artists. It was affordable, better than it is now. But it was a place it's that bohemian era, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it's, you know, not to play into like all the tropes, but it's, you know, the downtown era of like Andy Warhol and Basquiat. And I guess when I was I guess I don't need to say exactly how old I am, but when I was growing up, in the early 90s, I mean, the apartment downstairs from me was a brothel my entire childhood, and people sold crack on the doorstep until I was like well into college. I also lived in mafia territory, which changed a lot when Gotti went to prison. There was a lot happening. There were a lot of colorful characters. I actually always felt quite safe. It was interesting when I was growing up, some you know, kids, like parents at school and stuff, maybe didn't feel super jazzed about like their kids walking down the Bowery to like come have a play date at my house. But I always felt quite safe because I knew a lot of like the guys who like sat on stoops and were kind of doing stuff around the neighborhood. They were like, hey, Victoria, you on your way to ballet class? Like, teach me some moves when you get back.
They're like looking out for you. They looked out for the neighborhood.
Yeah, it was a community, albeit
flawed.
You know, just it was what it was. And I certainly wouldn't change it for anything. You know, it was a really wonderful childhood. You know, my parents always had interesting characters around. Food was a huge part of our household, as was dinner parties. My father is an incredible chef. He's French. From the south of France. He had an Italian mother who taught him how to cook, who I'm named after, Victoria. And there were always kind of like, you know, people around and dinner parties happening and delicious things being cooked in the kitchen. And my dad would go to, you know, all these like different kind of ethnic food shops all over New York and come home with ingredients that were new to him, you know, that he hadn't grown up with in the south of France, and experiment with them in the kitchen. So I think that also at a really young age gave me kind of like a fearlessness in the kitchen of just sort of like, yeah, you can just go into a shop and buy some things and maybe you don't really know what you're doing with them, but like go into the kitchen and kind of experiment and have fun. And I really saw the joy that gave my father. And then I also, you know, benefited from it because I got to eat the delicious things that he was making. So it was like a really creative, lively household.
I was about to say, I was like, it feels like I had a question for you that was about like how did the kitchen play into your house? Like, was what happened at your table and your dining table? And was it a space for creativity? I think you've answered that. Like the kitchen was a creative space. Yeah. No wonder why you fell in love with food. Yeah. And did you find that as a child, you often had interesting characters coming in and out of your home, like having dinner? Like, was that a big part of kind of your childhood?
I think so. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, the fact that my parents were both immigrants, you know, they had lots of friends from, you know, back home in Europe who of course wanted to come visit. So we often had, you know, friends staying with us or, you know, family coming to stay with us. And my parents really enjoyed hosting people. They still do. And so from a very young age, I also became very comfortable sitting at a table with usually adults, and listening to their conversation, sometimes participating, because my parents were also really plugged into the art scene. I went to lots of gallery openings as a kid, which I actually hated. I enjoy it now, but like as a kid, I was being dragged
this is
to
so
things.
boring.
And I was like, this is so boring. I want to like stay at home and play with my toys or like watch cartoons. Like people often ask, they're like, what was it like growing up in New York? Like, was that really weird? And it's like, I don't know anything different. Was it weird growing up in the suburbs? Was it weird growing up in the countryside? Like, kids are adaptable. They adapt to their environment.
And I don't necessarily think it's like weird per se at all. Actually, it's not weird at all. That was never, I just find it interesting because it's so different to what I was exposed to and to I think probably a lot of what my listeners were exposed to too. I think that New York is one of those cities where a lot of people are very nostalgic for the older eras of New York.
Totally.
I am massively nostalgic for like Sex and the City. I'm like, I just want to live in New York in the 90s. Like, please, can we go back? And then Love Story, the new show that's been blowing up that's about, Carolyn Bessette and JFK Jr., which also because I grew up in Australia, that story was not a huge thing.
Yeah.
Didn't know that he died. That they died. Sorry, that they both died.
Oh, was that a shock when you finished the show?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
I'm sorry.
Jeffrey's like, how did you not know?
Yeah.
I'm like, it wasn't something we knew. Okay.
Which is so fair. Why would you know
The
about
whole
this
show,
like
I'm thinking,
random
oh,
couple?
know where they are now. Shocking. Anyways.
Did you Google it while you were still watching?
Halfway
before you
through
got to the end?
Yeah, and then it ruined
dear.
it. I was like,
what?
Good times.
I wonder how many people watching the show didn't know that they'd
probably
passed.
a lot of international people.
Yeah.
Americans would know.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
anyways, I think there's a nostalgia for living here, and you lived here during that period, albeit you might have been young. I think like, what do you feel like it was like then? Is there a part of you that misses it? What was the city really like? Is it this vision that we all think of, or what's the reality of it?
I mean, New York has changed so much. It's a completely different city now. And it's interesting, like a lot of the massive gentrification of the Bowery and Soho and downtown occurred in my teenage years.
Interesting.
When I was already just like a really angsty teen. I was like really into punk rock music when I was a teenager. And like I used to go to CBGBs even though I was underage.
What's
and then when
CBGBs?
Oh, saucy.
Oh, man. How am I meant to know that? I didn't grow up here.
So CBGB's punk rock institution downtown.
Oh.
It's like a very small music venue, really tiny. I don't even know what the capacity is. Not like they would have ever given a shit about the capacity.
Is it?
It was on the Bowery. It's now the like a John Varvatos shoe store or something.
I know exactly where that is.
Yeah, and it was. I mean, it's like the Sex Pistols played there. I mean, like everyone.
Cool.
And it was an institution. Famous. It was covered in graffiti and stickers. The bathroom had no doors and was like, kind of unisex, and there was all kinds of insane things happening there. And when it closed down, because I guess the landlord raised the rent and they couldn't pay for it, it like kind of coincided with a lot of institutions in the neighborhood shutting down, family businesses like the local tailor and the local laundromat and the local bakery that I'd gone to throughout my childhood. And I was like really angry about it. Granted, again, moody teenager.
Yeah.
But like really angry in that I felt like the neighborhood that I had grown up in was becoming kind of sterilized and like this sort of Disney World playground for tourists. And the closing of CBGBs was like really sort of like the nail in the coffin of all of that for me. That being said, as a historian who has also studied the history of New York quite extensively, something that I've come to learn about New York City is that this is a city that has been constantly in flux, in motion, and in change since its inception. Like in the 19th century, there was a mayor, Philip Hone, in the early half of the 19th century when he was mayor. He has this great quote. He said, overturn, overturn, overturn. It is the maxim of New York. We barely allow our ancestors time to get cold in the grave before we dig them up and build something new.
Wow.
And this was like
That's
in the
so
1820s or the 1830s. And that's so true about New York.